A long driveway curves quietly through rows of ancient olive trees. Morning light touches the white walls of a sprawling villa above the Pacific. The gates are tall, iron, silent. Parked in the courtyard are cars that most people only see in magazines. A black Bentley, a silver Porsche, and farther back, almost hidden under the shadow of a jacaranda tree, a vintage Mercedes convertible that looks like it belongs to another decade. The house itself is enormous. Glass walls, terraces that stretch toward the ocean, a swimming pool so still it reflects the sky like polished glass. Inside, marble floors carry the echo of footsteps that rarely hurry. Someone walks slowly across the living room, barefoot. A woman with long hair, still unmistakably the same soft curls the world once saw on movie screens for more than 3 decades. Only now, the cameras are gone. The woman is Julia Roberts. At 59, she lives surrounded by a kind of quiet luxury that Hollywood once promised, but rarely delivers. But what makes the silence strange is not the wealth. It is the disappearance. Because somewhere between the last red carpet appearance and the endless interviews that used to fill television screens, Julia Roberts simply faded away. Not with scandal, not with drama, just absence. And that absence has become one of the quietest mysteries in Hollywood. For years, she was everywhere. The smile that filled theaters. The laugh that directors said could light an entire set. The actress who once commanded $20 million per film, when few women in Hollywood could even ask for half. Studios waited for her schedule. Magazines built covers around her name. But now, the days inside the villa follow a slower rhythm. In the kitchen, sunlight moves across a table where fresh fruit sits untouched. A housekeeper moves quietly between rooms. Somewhere upstairs, a door opens. Julia appears on the balcony overlooking the ocean. She carries a cup of coffee. No makeup, no cameras, just the wind from the sea pushing gently through her hair. People in Malibu sometimes see her driving along the coastal highway in one of her cars, sunglasses on, windows down. No bodyguards, no photographers chasing behind. Just another woman passing the cliffs. Yet the numbers behind her life tell a different story. Multiple properties across the United States, a ranch in New Mexico, luxury homes in California, art collections, investments that quietly grew while Hollywood moved on to younger stars. Her fortune, according to industry insiders, still sits comfortably in the hundreds of millions, enough that she never truly needs another role again. And perhaps that is exactly why she stepped away. Friends say the decision was not sudden. It came slowly. After years of scripts, after years of red carpets that all began to look the same, after years of hotel rooms in cities that blurred together, one evening someone close to her once recalled, Julia sat in a living room very much like this one. Large windows, the ocean outside, a stack of scripts on the table. She looked at them, then pushed them away. Maybe, she said quietly, the world has seen enough of me. It wasn't a retirement announcement. It wasn't a press release, just a sentence spoken into a quiet room. And from that moment on, her appearances grew fewer, then rarer, then almost non-existent. Television networks still run her films every year. Streaming platforms keep discovering new audiences for the old classics. Young actors still speak her name with a kind of reverence. But the woman herself? She remains somewhere between luxury and silence. In the afternoons, she sometimes walks down a stone path behind the villa. It leads to a private stretch of beach few people know about. The sand is pale. The waves roll in slowly. She walks there without anyone asking for photos. Without microphones. Without assistants reminding her about the next interview. Just Julia, a woman who once ruled Hollywood, now living inside a world that feels strangely removed from it. And sometimes, late at night, lights still glow inside the villa long after Malibu has gone quiet. In one room upstairs, a television flickers softly. Old films, old interviews, old premieres. A younger version of Julia Roberts smiling at crowds that seemed endless. Downstairs, the house remains silent. Outside, the expensive cars rest in the dark driveway. And somewhere inside that enormous home, Julia Roberts is still awake. The garage door opens slowly, not with a loud mechanical sound, just a quiet glide. Inside, the air smells faintly of polished leather and engine oil. 4 cars rest under soft ceiling lights. One of them is a Bentley, painted in a pale pearl color that reflects the morning sun like water. Next to it sits a dark Range Rover, still damp from being washed earlier in the day. Drops of water slide slowly down the windshield. A man in a navy uniform moves past the cars. He is careful, almost silent. He has worked at the property for years and knows that the owner prefers quiet mornings. Outside the garage, the villa spreads across the hillside like a private world. Glass walls face the Pacific. From the balcony, the ocean looks endless. Inside the house, the living room is larger than many apartments in Los Angeles. Soft cream sofas, tall windows that stretch from the floor to the ceiling. On the far wall hangs a painting, an abstract piece bought years ago at an auction in New York. Very few visitors know how much it cost. But the auction room that evening had been full, and Julia had simply raised her hand once. Just once. That was enough. Down the hallway, the house opens into a long corridor. 6 bedrooms, each one with its own balcony, each one prepared as if guests might arrive at any moment. But most nights, the doors stay closed, the sheets stay perfectly folded, and the hallways remain quiet. In the kitchen, sunlight moves across the marble counter. The refrigerator is large enough to store food for a small restaurant. Yet this morning, only a bowl of strawberries sits on the table. Next to it, a newspaper folded neatly. Julia walks in wearing a loose linen shirt, her hair tied back casually. She pours herself another cup of coffee. Outside the window, the pool glows pale blue. A gardener trims the hedges near the edge of the property. Beyond that, nothing but the ocean. Sometimes helicopters fly past the cliffs carrying tourists. They never realize who lives just above them. The woman who once filled movie theaters around the world now spends her afternoons reading on a terrace that smells faintly of sea salt. A soft chair, a wide umbrella, a table with a stack of books. From a distance, it looks like any quiet life. But every detail whispers something else. The stone floor was imported from Italy. The wooden doors were carved in Spain. Even the garden trees were transported here years ago, grown first in another place before being planted on this hill. In the evening, lights begin to glow across the villa. Warm yellow lamps inside the living room. Soft lights around the pool. A small fountain near the entrance begins to run. Water trickles slowly into a circular basin made of white stone. A house this large should feel crowded. But it doesn't. Often, the silence stretches across the rooms like a second atmosphere. Julia sometimes walks through the house late at night. Barefoot again, the marble floor cool beneath her feet. She pauses in front of a large mirror near the staircase. For a moment, she studies her reflection. The face is older now, lines at the corner of her eyes. But the same smile still appears when she tilts her head slightly. The same smile that once sold millions of movie tickets. Upstairs, one room is different from the others. The door is half open. Inside, old film posters line the wall. Framed photographs from premieres in Paris, London, New York. Awards ceremonies where cameras flashed like lightning. In one photo, she is standing between directors and actors who once dominated Hollywood. Everyone smiling. Everyone younger. Julia steps into the room slowly. Her hand brushes the frame of a photograph. Dust has barely touched it. The housekeeper cleans this room carefully. Even though the owner rarely comes here. Outside the villa, night settles over Malibu. The expensive cars in the garage remain still. The ocean keeps moving. Inside the enormous house, lights are still on in one upstairs window. And Julia Roberts is awake again. Not watching television, not reading scripts, just standing near the glass balcony doors, looking out into the dark Pacific, as if listening for something the rest of the world can no longer hear. Morning arrives slowly over Malibu. The sky turns pale first, then the ocean. Then the glass walls of the villa begin to glow with soft light. Inside the house, Everything is quiet. Julia walks down the staircase, slowly, one hand touching the wooden railing. She is 59 now, but the way she moves still carries something familiar, something the world remembers. Not the actress, not the celebrity, just the presence. At the bottom of the stairs she pauses, for a moment, looking at the large living room that stretches toward the ocean, the same room where producers once sat, directors, agents, people holding scripts and contracts worth millions. Now, there is only the sound of the sea. Julia crosses the room, barefoot again. The marble floor feels cold this early in the morning. Outside, the gardener is already working, clipping branches, watering the long line of white roses that runs along the edge of the property. They bloom almost all year here. Malibu weather is kind to flowers. Julia opens the glass door. Wind enters the room, soft, salty. She stands there for a while, not speaking, just watching the ocean move. Sometimes the silence here feels deeper than expected. Not lonely, just wide, like the view in front of the house. She walks toward the kitchen. Coffee again. Always coffee. The machine hums softly. Steam rises. For a moment, the kitchen smells warm and bitter. She leans against the counter, looking at the newspaper. Not reading, just staring at the headline. Hollywood news again. New actors, new premieres, new faces. Everything moving quickly. Julia folds the paper, quietly, places it aside. Hollywood has changed. A lot. Studios now chase younger stars. Streaming platforms release movies every week. Premieres look different. Even the red carpets feel louder than before. But inside this house, time moves slowly. Almost stubbornly. Julia walks into the living room again. A large piano sits near the window. She doesn't play often, but sometimes, late at night, a few notes echo through the house, soft, uncertain, almost like someone remembering a melody from long ago. She touches the edge of the piano, then walks past it. The hallway is long. Sunlight stretches across the floor. At the end of the corridor, a door stands open. The room with the old photographs. Julia stops there, just for a moment. Inside the room, faces from another life. Directors smiling. Actors in tuxedos. Premiere nights. Flashbulbs exploding like stars. Julia standing at the center of it all. Younger, radiant, unstoppable. She studies one photo longer than the others. A premiere in New York. Crowds behind the barricades. Hundreds of people shouting her name. Security guards holding the line. Julia waves. The smile is huge, fearless. That was a different world. A louder one. Now, the house is quiet again. She closes the door, slowly. Outside the villa, the afternoon sun begins to warm the terraces. The pool reflects the sky. A breeze moves the palm trees. Somewhere down the hill, a car passes along the coastal road. But up here, nothing changes much. Julia walks onto the balcony, the same place she stood yesterday, and the day before. From here, the ocean looks endless. No cameras, no reporters, no flashing lights, just the sea. She leans against the railing, thinking, or maybe not thinking at all. Sometimes the mind becomes quiet after years of noise. And Julia Roberts, once the brightest smile in Hollywood, now spends long afternoons here, between sunlight and silence. The afternoon grows quieter. Sunlight drifts slowly across the wooden floor. Outside the balcony, the ocean moves in long, steady breaths. Inside the house, Julia walks past the staircase again. No hurry. Just the slow rhythm of someone who no longer needs to chase time. She stops near the hallway mirror. The same mirror that has been there for years. Tall, old, framed in dark wood. For a moment she looks at her reflection. Not quickly. Not the way people do when they are rushing somewhere. She looks carefully. The curls are still there. A little softer now. A few silver strands catching the light. Fine lines near the eyes. Small, but honest. Julia tilts her head slightly, almost amused, almost surprised. Because for a second, another face appears in the mirror. Younger, bright, unstoppable. She turns away, but the memory stays. Down the corridor, a door stands half open. The room is quiet. Julia steps inside. Dust floats slowly in the afternoon light. The walls are covered with frames, old photographs, old premieres, old magazine covers. But one frame sits apart from the others. Larger, simple black border. Inside, a poster. Pretty woman. The colors are slightly faded now, but the smile in the poster is unmistakable. A young woman with wild curls, standing beside a man in a suit. Hollywood in the early 1990s. Julia stands there, looking at it for a long moment. 30 years, maybe more. Back then, everything moved fast. Studios calling every week. Scripts arriving in stacks. Directors flying across the country just to meet her. And everywhere, cameras. Thousands of them. Flashes exploding at premieres. Reporters shouting questions. Fans screaming outside theaters. Julia remembers one night in particular. Los Angeles. The premiere of that film. Crowds so large the police had to block the streets. People climbing fences just to see her walk across the red carpet. Someone shouted her name. Another voice shouted louder. And suddenly, the entire street was chanting, "Julia! Julia! Julia!" She had laughed then, half shocked, half delighted. The world felt enormous, and she was standing at the center of it. Julia steps closer to the poster. Her fingers touch the edge of the frame, gently, like touching an old photograph in a family album. That girl in the poster, she changed everything. Overnight, Hollywood opened every door. Offers came from everywhere. Romantic films, dramas, stories written just for her. And for years, the name Julia Roberts carried a kind of electricity, a promise. People believed that if she appeared on screen, the film would matter. The room grows quiet again. Outside, a wave crashes softly against the rocks below the cliff. Julia takes a step back, still looking at the poster. That girl, the one in the red dress, the one with the unstoppable smile, she once belonged to the world. But the woman standing here now belongs to something else. The present. The quiet. Julia turns toward the door. Before leaving the room, she glances once more at the wall. Not at the poster this time. At a smaller photograph beside it. A candid picture, taken somewhere between scenes. No red carpet. No cameras. Just Julia sitting on a folding chair. Laughing. Hair blown by the wind. For a second, she smiles again. The same smile. Then she switches off the light. The hallway outside is dim now. Evening has begun to settle over Malibu. Julia walks slowly toward the balcony. The ocean is darker now. Deep blue. Almost black. Lights from distant boats flicker on the horizon. She stands there, looking out. Behind her, the room with the poster is quiet again. And the girl from 30 years ago remains frozen inside the frame. Evening settles slowly over the hill. The last light of the sun fades behind the Pacific. Inside the villa, small lamps begin to glow one by one. Soft yellow, warm. The kitchen becomes busier for a while. A man in a white jacket moves quietly between the stove and the marble counter. The private chef. He has worked here long enough to know the rhythm of the house. No loud music. No crowded dinners. Just simple meals prepared carefully. Tonight, fresh salmon. Roasted vegetables. A small bowl of pasta with olive oil and herbs. Nothing extravagant, but everything perfect. On the dining table, candles are lit. 3 of them. Tall. Thin. The table itself is long enough for 12 people. Heavy oak. Polished every week. But Julia sits at one corner. Just one plate. One glass of water. She eats slowly, sometimes pausing to look out through the large glass wall. Outside, the Pacific has turned almost black. Only the reflection of the moon moves across the surface. Far away, a boat light flickers. The chef walks past once, quietly asking if she needs anything else. Julia smiles, shakes her head. No, thank you. Her voice is soft. The kind of voice that once filled movie theaters. After dinner, the dishes disappear almost immediately. The table becomes empty again. Julia walks into the living room. A fire burns in the large stone fireplace. Even though Malibu rarely gets cold, the flames are small, calm. She lowers herself onto the sofa, the one facing the ocean. Next to the sofa sits a small wooden table. On it, a book, a pair of reading glasses, and an old remote control. Julia picks up the book, reads 2 pages, then stops. Not tired, just distracted. The sound of waves carries through the slightly open window. Some nights she turns on the television. Old films, black and white classics, actors from another era, Humphrey Bogart, Audrey Hepburn, people who once filled screens the same way she did. Tonight, the television stays off. Julia stands again, walks slowly across the living room, past the piano, past the tall shelves filled with books and scripts. Some of those scripts were never filmed. Some were offered. Some she refused. They remain here like quiet possibilities. Outside on the terrace, the air feels cooler. The swimming pool glows faintly blue under the water lights. Palm trees sway gently. The gardener has already left for the evening. The house feels even larger now. Julia sits in a chair near the edge of the terrace. A blanket rests over the back. She wraps it around her shoulders. Not because she is cold, just because the ocean wind carries a chill after sunset. From this spot, she can see the entire coastline. Malibu stretching in both directions. Occasional car lights sliding along the highway far below. For a moment, she closes her eyes, listening. Nothing dramatic. Just the ocean. The wind. Somewhere inside the house, a clock ticks quietly. Later in the night, the chef leaves through the back entrance. The housekeeper has already gone hours earlier. Lights in most rooms switch off automatically. But one room upstairs stays lit. Julia walks slowly back inside. The marble floor reflects the dim glow of the hallway lamps. She climbs the staircase. Step by step, the house behind her becomes silent again. Outside, the Pacific keeps moving in the dark. Inside the villa, Julia Roberts walks into the bedroom. The curtains are still open, and beyond the glass, the ocean stretches endlessly into the night. Night grows deeper over Malibu. The ocean disappears into darkness. Only the faint sound of waves continues below the cliffs. Inside the villa, most of the lights are already off, but Julia is still awake. Sometimes sleep arrives easily, sometimes it doesn't. Tonight, it doesn't. She sits on the edge of the bed for a while, looking toward the window. The curtains move slightly with the wind. A soft silver light from the moon touches the floor. Julia exhales slowly, then stands. No rush, just a quiet decision to move. She walks out of the bedroom. The hallway upstairs feels cooler at night. A long strip of light glows along the wall. Automatic, soft. She walks toward the staircase, barefoot again. Her steps make almost no sound. Downstairs, the living room looks different in the dark. The fireplace has gone out. Only a few embers remain. Julia crosses the room slowly. The house is so quiet now that even the ocean seems distant. She stops near a large wooden shelf. For a moment, she just stands there. On the shelf are several small statues. Golden, heavy. The shapes are unmistakable. Academy Awards. One of them catches the dim light from the lamp nearby. The gold surface glows faintly. Julia reaches out. Her fingers brush the base of the statue. Not lifting it, just touching it. Very lightly. There was a night once, a long time ago. Bright lights, music, hundreds of cameras. Her name called across a giant theater. People standing, applause that seemed endless. She remembers walking onto the stage. The dress, the weight of the moment, the strange mixture of joy and disbelief. For a few seconds she had no words. The whole world watching. Julia smiles slightly at the memory. Then her hand drops back to her side. The statue remains exactly where it was. Still, silent. She walks away, across the living room, past the piano again. Sometimes in the middle of the night, she presses a few keys, just to hear something alive in the silence. Tonight she doesn't. Instead, she walks toward the kitchen. The refrigerator light flashes softly when she opens it. Inside, a glass bottle of sparkling water, a bowl of fruit. Nothing else she wants. She pours the water into a small glass, takes a sip, leans against the counter. The marble feels cool under her hand. For a moment, she watches the reflection of the kitchen lights in the window. Her own reflection appears there too, faint, older, but calm. Julia closes the refrigerator. The kitchen becomes dim again. She walks back toward the living room. Outside the glass wall, the pool still glows quietly, blue against the dark. The terrace chairs are empty. The ocean invisible, but its sound continues. Always there. Julia opens the door slightly. Cold air slips inside. She steps onto the terrace, wraps her arms loosely around herself. Somewhere down the coast, a dog barks once. Then silence returns. The sky above Malibu is wide tonight, stars scattered across it. Julia sits in the chair near the edge of the terrace, the same chair she used earlier. From here, she can see the faint outline of the horizon. She stays there for a long time, not thinking about films, not thinking about Hollywood, just listening, just breathing. Inside the villa, the golden statues remain on the shelf, still catching the dim light. And outside, Julia Roberts sits quietly, between the dark ocean and the quiet sky. Sometimes the lights in the villa stay on very late, later than most houses on the hill. A neighbor once mentioned it quietly while walking his dog along the road below. "The house up there," he said, "always has a window glowing after midnight." No one asked more questions. Malibu has many private lives, many famous names behind tall gates. But that particular house, people notice it. Not because of parties. There are no loud cars arriving, no music spilling into the night. Just light. One window, upstairs, almost every night. Inside the house, Julia moves slowly through the rooms, not restless, just awake. Sometimes she opens the large cabinet near the piano. Inside are boxes, old ones, simple cardboard. Nothing glamorous about them. She pulls one box down, places it on the table. For a moment she doesn't open it, just looks at it. Then, slowly, the lid lifts. Inside are photographs, not the framed kind on the walls. These are different. Private ones. A younger Julia sitting in the back seat of a car. Hair messy, laughing. Another photo, a film set somewhere in the early 1990s. Cameras everywhere. A director shouting instructions. Julia standing beside a trailer with her name on the door. Another picture, grainy, taken by someone backstage at an award show. She is wearing a dress that once appeared on every magazine cover in the world. Julia flips through the photos one by one. The room stays quiet. Every so often she pauses, holding one picture longer than the others. Some nights she remembers the strange rhythm of those years. Flights every week. Cities changing constantly. Paris, London, New York, Tokyo. People waiting at airports. Fans outside hotels. The same question again and again. "Julia, can we get one photo?" "Julia, one more interview." Julia closes the box halfway, then opens it again, almost as if something inside it still holds unfinished conversations. Downstairs, the grandfather clock in the hallway strikes once, a slow, deep sound. The house feels even larger at this hour. Julia carries the box toward the living room, sets it beside the sofa. She walks to the window. Outside, the ocean is invisible, but the wind moves through the trees near the terrace. Palm leaves whisper against each other. Far down the highway, a motorcycle passes. The sound fades quickly. Julia rests her hand against the glass. Cold. She remembers a night long ago when crowds filled a street outside a theater. Someone had thrown roses onto the red carpet. Red petals everywhere. People pushing forward just to see her walk past. Security guards trying to hold the line. The noise, loud enough to vibrate through the pavement. And now, there is only wind. Julia turns away from the window. The box of photographs waits on the table. She opens it again. One picture sits near the top. Different from the others, a candid shot. No cameras, no red carpet. Just Julia standing outside a small cafe somewhere in Europe. A scarf around her neck. A cup of coffee in her hand. Looking off to the side. Not posing, just existing in that moment. Julia studies the picture quietly. For a while, she doesn't move. Somewhere upstairs, the house creaks softly, old wood adjusting to the night air. Julia places the photo back in the box, closes the lid gently. Across the room, the piano sits in shadow. The golden awards on the shelf reflect a faint light from the hallway. And outside, a neighbor walking his dog again might glance up the hill and see that same window glowing in the middle of the night. Night deepens. Malibu grows quieter with every passing hour. The road along the cliffs has almost no cars now. Only the occasional headlights sliding through the dark before disappearing again. Up on the hill, the white villa stands still, large windows reflecting the faint glow of the moon. Most of the lights inside have gone out, except one. The balcony doors open slowly. Julia steps outside, a thin cardigan over her shoulders, her hair moving slightly in the wind from the ocean. She pauses there, hands resting lightly on the railing. The Pacific stretches in front of her, endless, black, only the silver path of moonlight breaking across the surface. Far away, tiny lights drift across the water. A few yachts moving slowly along the coastline, their engines too distant to hear. In the garden below, the fountain continues its quiet rhythm. Water falling, again and again. Julia breathes in the cool air. Salt! Night. Somewhere along the beach below, waves roll toward the shore. Soft. Persistent. She walks a few steps along the balcony, stops beside a small table. On it, a single glass of red wine. Half full. She picks it up, holds it loosely in one hand. Not drinking, just watching the surface move gently as the wind passes. Behind her, inside the bedroom, the lights remain dim, curtains shifting softly with the breeze. The large house feels almost asleep. Empty hallways, closed doors, rooms waiting quietly in the dark. Downstairs, the marble floor reflects the faint glow from the staircase lamp. The piano stands silent, the photographs remain inside their box, and the golden statues on the shelf still catch the small line of light from the hallway. Outside, Julia leans slightly against the railing, her eyes following the distant lights of a boat moving across the horizon. Slowly, almost drifting, for a moment she lifts the glass, takes a small sip, then lowers it again. The wind brushes across the balcony, carrying the steady sound of waves. Somewhere below the cliff, the ocean meets the shore. Over and over, Julia remains there, looking out into the dark water. Behind her, the quiet villa. In front of her, the wide Pacific. And above Malibu, the night sky remains full of stars.